The hall was larger than anything Elias Cade had ever seen, and he had once stood at the edge of Earth's largest orbital dock. This place felt different. The ceiling curved so high it disappeared into a soft blue glow, like an artificial sky. Long arcs of light ran across it, pulsing slowly, as if the room itself was breathing. Elias stood still at the center platform, his hands folded behind his back, his posture calm. He wore the formal dark uniform chosen by Earth's diplomats, simple in design, no weapons, no sharp lines. He looked human, very human, and that he knew already made him strange here. Around him sat the delegates of 47 known species. Some floated in gravity fields, others rested on padded platforms, some stood on jointed limbs that bent in ways Elias tried not to stare at. The irony of that thought was not lost on him. Do not stare, they had told him. The briefing on the way here had been clear. For most species in the Galactic Compact, direct eye contact was a sign of threat, dominance, or open challenge. Humans, with their forward-facing eyes and habit of looking directly at one another, were already considered unsettling. Elias had nodded. He had understood. And yet, now that he was here, he found it hard not to look. Not because he wanted to challenge anyone, but because this was what he did. Humans observed. They noticed. They learned. It was how they survived back when the universe was smaller and full of teeth. His gaze moved slowly, calmly, not lingering too long on any one delegate. Or so he thought. A subtle shift in the room told him he had misjudged. Several delegates leaned back. One creature with mirrored skin adjusted the light around itself, dimming. Another curled its tendrils closer to its body. A ripple of unease spread through the hall, quiet but real. Elias exhaled slowly and softened his expression, lowering his eyes for a moment before raising them again. Old habit. On Earth, lowering your eyes could mean submission. Here it meant safety, or so they claimed. Human envoy, a voice echoed through the hall, translated smoothly into Elias' earpiece. You are reminded of compact conduct. Elias inclined his head slightly. Of course, he said. His voice was steady, polite. No offense intended. He meant it, and then he felt it. Someone was watching him back. The sensation was subtle but clear, not hostile, not afraid, curious. Elias lifted his eyes again, this time more carefully, following instinct rather than protocol. His gaze settled on a figure seated slightly apart from the others. She appeared almost humanoid, though Elias knew better than to trust appearances. Her skin was a pale silver gray, smooth, catching the light like polished stone. Her eyes were large, dark, and unblinking. No visible pupils, no flicker of fear. She did not look away. The moment stretched. Elias felt his heart beat a little faster, not from fear but from awareness. This was a mistake. He should break eye contact, he knew that. But she tilted her head just slightly, and something in her expression shifted. Not anger, not threat, interest. A quiet murmur passed through the hall. Elias sensed it more than heard it. He forced himself to lower his gaze just as a soft voice reached his ears through a private channel. You keep staring like that, she whispered, her tone smooth, almost amused, and I might start to like it. Elias froze for half a second. That was not in the briefings. He raised his eyes again, more slowly this time. She was still watching him, still calm, still unafraid. If anything, she looked more focused now, as if he had confirmed something she suspected. I apologize, Elias said, keeping his voice neutral. I did not mean to cause discomfort. She studied him for another long moment. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. It was subtle, barely a curve of her lips, but it was unmistakable. Discomfort is not what you caused, she replied. Confusion, perhaps, fascination, maybe. Before Elias could respond, the central platform activated and the formal proceedings resumed. Voices overlapped, translators hummed, and attention shifted back to treaties, trade routes, and shared borders. But Elias could still feel her gaze on him, steady and thoughtful. She was known as Ceres of the Ninth Spiral, though Elias would learn that later. At this moment, she was officially an observer, a role given to those whose species specialized in long-term threat evaluation. Her kind did not speak often in public sessions. They watched. They remembered, and she had never seen a species like this before. Humans were not physically impressive by galactic standards. They lacked claws, armor, venom, or natural energy fields. Their technology was advanced, yes, but not exceptional. What unsettled Ceres was not their tools. It was their eyes. Most species avoided direct focus. Vision for them was wide, diffuse, shared among multiple sensory inputs. To lock onto a single point meant danger. Humans did it constantly. Ceres watched Elias as the session continued. He listened more than he spoke. He reacted subtly to shifts in tone, posture, even silence. When another delegate grew tense, Elias noticed. When a lie was spoken, his attention sharpened. He was always watching, not aggressively. Not openly, but completely. She realized then that the warnings about humans had been incomplete. They were not predators in the traditional sense. They did not stalk with hunger or instinct. They stalked with curiosity, and curiosity, Ceres knew, could be far more dangerous. When the session ended, Elias returned to his assigned quarters, a modest space designed to accommodate human biology. He loosened his collar and sat on the edge of the resting platform, replaying the encounter in his mind. The whisper troubled him. Not because it felt threatening, but because it felt intentional. Someone had reached out, someone who was not supposed to. His console chimed softly. An incoming private message, cleared through diplomatic channels. That alone was unusual. He accepted it. Ceres appeared on the display, her image crisp and detailed. Up close, Elias could see fine lines along her cheeks, subtle patterns in her skin that shifted with her expressions. "You adapted quickly," she said. "I was not aware I needed to," Elias replied carefully. "That is what makes it interesting," Ceres said. "Most species here follow rules because they are afraid. Humans follow them because they choose to." Elias considered his words before answering. "Fear has never been a good teacher for us." Ceres's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in thought. "No, you had other teachers, harsh ones." The silence that followed was not awkward, it was heavy. "You were watching us," Elias said finally. "Yes," Ceres replied. "That is my purpose." "And what did you see?" She leaned closer to the display, her face filling the screen. "A species that survived a world actively trying to kill it. A species that learned to read intent from the smallest movement. A species that does not look away." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. "That unsettles us," she continued, "because it means when humans enter a room they are already learning how to survive it." "That is not hostile," Elias said. "No," Ceres agreed, "but it is powerful." The screen dimmed as the call ended, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts. Far above, beyond the station's walls, stars burned quietly. Humanity had finally stepped into the wider galaxy, not with weapons raised, but with eyes open. And somewhere in the vast web of alien civilizations, a watcher had begun to watch humanity back, not with fear, but with growing, dangerous interest. The station never truly slept. Light levels dimmed and shifted, sound softened, but energy still flowed through its vast structure like a slow, steady pulse. Elias Cade walked through one of the quiet corridors reserved for diplomats, his footsteps echoing softly against the smooth floor. He should have been resting. Tomorrow would bring more talks, more careful words, more invisible lines he was expected not to cross. Instead, his mind refused to settle. The image of Ceres lingered with him. The way she had looked at him, not through him, not around him, but directly at him. As if he were not just a representative of humanity, but a puzzle she intended to solve. He stopped near a transparent wall that looked out into open space. Stars drifted slowly past, distant and cold. Humans had always looked up at the night sky with wonder. Now, standing here, Elias felt something different, awareness, as if the universe had finally looked back. Behind layers of security and protocol, Saris moved through a very different set of corridors. Hers were not meant for comfort, but for observation. They were lined with sensors, memory nodes, and quiet chambers where data could be reviewed without interruption. Her kind valued patience above all else. Rushed conclusions had ended civilizations before. She entered one such chamber and allowed the door to seal behind her. The room adjusted to her presence, light shifting to a spectrum comfortable for her vision. In the center, a projection formed, recorded footage from the conclave. The human stood at the center of it. Saris replayed the moment when Elias first raised his eyes. She slowed it, then slowed it further. His pupils adjusted almost instantly. His posture remained open, balanced. No sign of fear, no sign of aggression, interest without hunger. She had studied hundreds of species over her long service. Most fell into patterns quickly: defensive, territorial, hierarchical. Humans did not fit neatly into any of them. She brought up historical data Earth had shared freely. Climate disasters, resource wars, pandemics, near-extinction events. Again and again, humanity had faced collapse. Again and again, they had adapted. Saris felt something close to unease. Not fear, her kind had evolved beyond that, but caution. Meanwhile, Elias found himself summoned sooner than expected. The message arrived early, marked as optional but encouraged. A small discussion group, cultural exchange officially. Unofficially, he suspected evaluation. He arrived at the meeting room to find only 3 other delegates present. 2 were familiar trade representatives. The third was Saris. She inclined her head slightly as he entered. Elias returned the gesture, careful not to hold her gaze too long. He was learning. The discussion began politely. Food production, shared navigation standards, minor misunderstandings between border systems. Elias answered clearly, honestly, choosing his words with care. Throughout it all, Saris watched. At one point, a delegate from a reptilian species made a pointed remark about humanity's history of internal conflict. The room tensed. Elias felt it immediately. "Yes," Elias said calmly, before the tension could sharpen. "We fought each other for a long time. Sometimes we still do, but every lesson cost us dearly. We remember those costs." The reptilian delegate studied him, then slowly inclined their head. The tension eased. Saris noted the timing. Elias had not reacted to the words alone. He had reacted to the room. After the meeting, as the others departed, Saris lingered. "You did not defend your species," she said. "I did," Elias replied, "just not with denial." "That is unusual," Saris said. "Most species rewrite their past to appear stronger." "We survived because we faced it," Elias said simply. They walked together for a short distance, silence stretching between them. It was not uncomfortable. "You are being evaluated," Saris said at last. Elias smiled faintly. "I assumed that from the moment I arrived." "Most do not realize it so quickly." "Most humans do," Elias replied. "We evolved being watched, by predators, by rivals, by our own kind." Saris stopped walking and turned to face him fully. Elias met her gaze for a brief moment, then softened it, letting it drift just enough to show respect without retreat. "You notice everything," she said quietly. "We try," Elias answered. "It keeps us alive." That night, events unfolded faster than anyone expected. An alert rippled through the station. Not a full alarm, but a warning. An external probe had entered restricted space near the station's perimeter. Its design was unfamiliar. Its energy signature did not match any known member species. Security forces moved quickly, sealing sections of the station. Diplomats were advised to remain in their quarters. Elias complied, though his attention sharpened. Unknowns made humans restless. In her observation chamber, Saris watched the data stream with intense focus. The probe's movement was deliberate, almost curious. It scanned, adjusted, scanned again. It behaves like a scout, one of her analysts said through a shared channel. Yes, Saris replied, but not a careless one. The probe did not attack. It did not transmit openly. It simply observed. Saris felt a strange sense of familiarity. Elsewhere, Elias stood near the viewport in his quarters, watching security craft move into position. He did not know why, but something about the probe's behavior bothered him. "It's watching," he murmured to himself, "just like we did." A sudden realization formed. Humans had sent probes like this once, long before faster-than-light travel, silent, careful, designed to learn without being seen. His console chimed. A message from Saris marked urgent. "You recognize this pattern," she said without preamble. "Yes," Elias replied. "It's cautious. It doesn't want to be noticed yet." "Then why approach at all?" Elias thought for a moment. "Because it's testing boundaries, seeing how we react." The probe shifted suddenly, altering its course slightly, not fleeing but adjusting. Saris watched the response times across the station. Defensive systems activated, patrols repositioned, communications tightened, and then she noticed something else. Human systems were already adapting. Elias' team had begun modeling the probe's movement, predicting its next adjustments, not with perfect accuracy but close enough to matter. "They're learning in real time," one analyst said. "Yes," Saris replied. "They always are." The probe withdrew after several tense hours, slipping back into the dark without a single hostile action. Relief spread through the station, but for Saris the unease deepened. Humans had not panicked. They had not overreacted. They had watched back. Later, Saris met Elias again, this time in a quiet observation garden where artificial plants grew under soft light. It was one of the few places designed to calm multiple species at once. "That was not part of the compact," Elias said. "No," Saris agreed. "It was something else." "Something new," Elias said. "Or something very old," Saris replied. She studied him for a long moment. "If such a species returns in force, how would humanity respond?" Elias did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was calm but firm. "We would try to understand them first," he said. "We always do, but if understanding fails, we survive." Saris felt a strange certainty settle within her. The galaxy had many powerful species, many ancient ones, but few that could learn as fast as humans did when faced with the unknown, and fewer still who could do so without looking away. As she watched Elias walk away through the garden, Saris understood that humanity was no longer just being evaluated. They were being noticed. The station felt different after the probe incident. Nothing visible had changed, but the air carried a quiet tension like a held breath. Conversations were softer. Movements were more careful. Even the lights seemed slightly dimmer, as if the station itself was waiting. Elias Cade noticed it the moment he stepped out of his quarters. Humans were good at sensing shifts in mood, even in places that were not alive. He walked calmly, but his mind was alert. Something had started, and no one yet knew how far it would go. The probe had not returned, but its absence was not comforting. On Earth, Elias had learned that silence after contact often meant preparation. Across the station, Sarah sat within the inner observation chamber, surrounded by layered displays of data. Patterns scrolled slowly before her eyes. Energy readings, movement predictions, behavioral models. Her kind did not rush conclusions, but they also did not ignore warnings. The models were changing. Before humanity's arrival, most projections followed familiar curves: slow growth, stable alliances, predictable conflicts. Now, subtle deviations appeared wherever humans were added to the equation, not because they were aggressive, but because they adjusted too quickly. "They disrupt probability," one of her analysts said quietly. Saris did not respond at first. She was watching a replay of Elias during the probe incident. Not the obvious moments, but the quiet ones, his stillness, his focus. The way his eyes tracked information even when no display was in front of him. He was not afraid, she said at last. No, the analyst agreed. But he was ready. That was the difference. Later that cycle, the Compact Council reconvened in emergency session. Elias stood once more at the central platform, aware of far more eyes on him than before. This time, many did not look away. The probe incident had shaken old assumptions. If an unknown force existed beyond known space, then every member species was suddenly vulnerable. And humans, new and untested, stood at the center of the discussion. Some delegates argued for isolation. Others demanded preemptive defenses. A few, more cautious, called for information first. Elias listened. When it was his turn to speak, he did not rush. Humanity does not know who sent the probe, he said, but we know what it means to be watched. We know what it means to fear what we do not understand. Murmurs spread through the hall. We also know that reacting blindly often creates the very threat we fear, Elias continued. We believe observation should be answered with observation, calm with calm. Strength with readiness, not aggression. A sharp voice cut in. Easy words from a species that has never faced annihilation from the stars. Elias turned toward the speaker. We have faced annihilation, he said simply. From our own world, from each other, from nature itself. Silence followed. Saris watched closely. Elias did not raise his voice. He did not posture. He stated facts grounded in experience, not pride. After the session, the vote was split. No unified action would be taken yet. Monitoring would continue. Preparations would be discreet. It was not enough to ease everyone's fears. As Elias left the chamber, Saris joined him without announcement, falling into step beside him. You spoke well, she said. I spoke honestly, Elias replied. That is rare in moments like this, Saris said. Fear often reshapes truth. Elias glanced at her briefly. Fear is useful, panic is not. They walked in silence for a while. The corridor lights reflected softly off Saris's skin. There is something else, Saris said at last. Some members of the Compact are discussing restrictions. On humans, Elias said, not surprised. Yes, because we adapt too fast, he said. Because you observe too closely, she corrected. Elias smiled faintly. Those are the same thing. That cycle, Elias was asked to attend a smaller, private meeting, no formal chamber. No translators broadcasting publicly, only a handful of delegates chosen carefully. The topic was not the probe, it was humanity. Questions came slowly at first, about human psychology, human military structure, human history, not the polished version but the difficult parts. Elias answered them all. He spoke of early humans watching the dark for predators, of learning patterns in the movement of animals, of reading faces to detect lies or intent, of how survival depended on noticing what others missed. You sound like hunters, one delegate said. Elias shook his head. We were prey long before we were hunters. That is what taught us to watch. That answer unsettled them more than any display of strength could have. Meanwhile, Saris dug deeper into human archives, not the official records but personal accounts, diaries, art stories. She studied how humans imagined the unknown. What she found disturbed her. Again and again, humans wrote of the universe as vast and dangerous but also full of possibility. They did not assume safety. They hoped for it but prepared for the opposite. Humans dreamed of the stars not as conquerors but as survivors looking for a place to stand. That made them unpredictable. The probe returned sooner than expected. This time it did not stay at the edges. It moved closer, slow and deliberate. Compact defenses tracked it but did not fire. Orders were clear, do not escalate. Elias watched the data feed alongside security officers. His eyes narrowed slightly. It's adjusting to our response time, he said. One officer frowned. How can you tell? Because it's waiting exactly long enough for us to react, Elias replied. Not too fast, not too slow. Saris observed the same data from her chamber. She felt a cold certainty settle in her thoughts. It's learning, she said, just like humans would. The probe transmitted a narrowband signal, not language, not yet, a simple mathematical sequence, a test. The station's systems hesitated. Protocol demanded analysis before response. Elias did not hesitate. Answer it, he said, with the next sequence. The officers looked at him sharply. That's not approved. If we stay silent, it learns fear, Elias said. If we answer, it learns intent. Saris intervened through command channels. Authorize the response. The signal was sent. The probe paused. Then it adjusted its position, aligning directly with the station. Not targeting, facing. A ripple of unease passed through everyone watching. It acknowledged us, someone whispered. Yes, Elias said. Now it's deciding what we are. The probe withdrew again after the exchange, disappearing into deep space. But this time it left something behind. Data, a partial map. Incomplete, fragmented. A hint of routes beyond known space. A warning or an invitation. The compact was divided. Some saw opportunity. Others saw doom. Saris saw inevitability. Later, she met Elias in the observation garden once more. Artificial leaves rustled softly as the environment adjusted to their presence. You answered without permission, she said. I answered with understanding, Elias replied. You may have changed everything, Saris said. Elias looked out at the simulated sky above them. Everything changes eventually. Saris studied him, her gaze steady. Do humans ever stop watching? Elias thought for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No. Even when we sleep, part of us listens. Saris felt a strange mix of concern and admiration. The galaxy had always believed that power came from strength, numbers, or age. Humanity was showing a different truth. Power could come from attention. And once given, it was never easily taken back. The station no longer felt neutral. It was still clean, still calm on the surface, but something invisible had shifted. The corridors were busier now, filled with quiet movement and careful glances. Delegates spoke in lower tones. Security teams passed more often. Everyone knew something important was coming, even if no one could name it yet. Elias Cade felt it in the way people looked at him. Some watched with interest, some with caution, a few with open concern. Humans were no longer just new members of the compact. They were becoming a variable that could not be ignored. Elias sat in a small conference room, alone, reviewing reports on his console. He had read them all before, but humans had a habit of rereading things when the stakes were high. Patterns sometimes showed themselves only the second or third time. The probe's data still occupied most of his thoughts. It had not been a greeting, and it had not been a threat. It had been something else, assessment. A soft chime sounded at the door. Elias straightened slightly. Enter. Saris stepped inside. She moved with her usual quiet confidence, the door sealing behind her. Her expression was calm, but Elias had learned enough to notice the tension beneath it. They are forming a closed session, she said. Elias did not need to ask who they were. The council, he asked. Yes, without you. He leaned back slightly, considering that. That was always going to happen. Perhaps, Saris said, but the tone has changed. Some members are afraid. Of the probe, Elias said. Of you, Saris corrected. Elias gave a small, tired smile. We haven't done anything. That is part of the problem, Saris said. You observe, you adapt, you respond without panic. Many species are not used to that. Elias folded his hands together. Fear often looks for a reason after it appears. Saris studied him for a moment, then nodded. There is discussion of limiting human access. Restricted information, delayed responses, controlled involvement. Quarantine without calling it one, Elias said. Yes. Silence settled between them. Will it pass? Elias asked. That depends, Saris said carefully, on what happens next. As if the universe itself had been listening, alarms did not sound, but notifications spread rapidly through internal channels. Not loud, not urgent, serious. The probe had returned. This time it did not stop at the station's perimeter. It entered shared space. Elias was on his feet instantly. Where? Saris activated a display. The probe hovered at a safe but deliberate distance from the station's main axis. Its shape had changed slightly, as if adjusted based on previous observations. It remembers, Elias said quietly. Yes, Saris replied, and it has learned. Compact defenses tracked it, weapons systems locked but inactive. No one wanted to be the one who fired first. A transmission followed, not mathematical this time, a pattern of symbols shifting slowly. Not a full language but closer than before, enough to show intent. Elias leaned forward. It's trying to communicate. Or provoke, Saris said. Or understand, Elias replied. The closed council session was immediately interrupted. Delegates flooded into emergency channels. Opinions clashed, orders overlapped. Some demanded silence, others demanded a show of force. Elias felt a familiar frustration rise. Humans had seen this before, fear-splitting groups when unity mattered most. They're going to make it worse, he said. Saris did not argue. Yes. What happens if we do nothing? Elias asked. It learns we are afraid, Saris said, or divided, and if we attack, it learns we are hostile. Elias exhaled slowly. Then we need a third option. Saris turned to him. You already have one in mind. Yes, Elias said. But they won't like it. He requested an open channel to the council. It was denied, not officially, just delayed, deferred, lost in procedure. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Humans had another habit when systems failed them. They acted anyway. He turned to Saris. I need access. To what? She asked. To transmit, he said. Directly. Saris hesitated. What he was asking for crossed lines that had existed long before humanity reached the stars, protocols, safeguards, carefully built walls. But she also remembered what her own people were meant to do, observe threats before they became disasters. You will speak for your species, she said slowly. I will speak as what we are, Elias replied. Listeners. Saris made her choice. The channel opened. Across the station, screens flickered. In council chambers, private rooms, observation decks, Elias Cade appeared. The probe's signal was still active, its symbols shifting patiently. Elias stood straight, his expression calm. This is Elias Cade, he said, his voice steady. Representative of humanity. Gasps rippled through council chambers. Orders to cut the feed followed. They were ignored. We see you, Elias continued, directing his words not just to the probe but to anyone listening. We know you are watching. That is how we began too. Saris watched from the side, her focus absolute. We do not know your intent, Elias said, but we choose not to assume hostility. We choose to answer curiosity with curiosity. He paused, then did something no one expected. He stepped closer to the camera and looked directly at it. Direct eye contact. Across the station, several delegates recoiled. Some turned away. The probe did not move. If you are learning, Elias said, then learn this. We are careful. We are patient. And we are not alone here. He did not threaten. He did not plead. He acknowledged. The symbols on the probe's display shifted faster. New combinations emerged, more complex, more deliberate. It's responding, someone whispered over an open channel. The probe transmitted again. This time the pattern mirrored parts of Elias' message, not the words but the structure, recognition. Then slowly the probe backed away, not fleeing, withdrawing. The channel cut. The station fell into stunned silence. Elias let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Security reports poured in. No attack, no hostile action. The probe exited shared space and vanished into the dark once more. The council erupted. Some shouted, some accused, some demanded explanations. But something else had changed. They had all seen it. A human had spoken to the unknown, and the unknown had listened. Hours later, in a quiet chamber far from the noise, Saris sat with Elias. The tension between them was different now. Sharper, heavier. You crossed many lines, she said. I know, Elias replied. They may never trust you fully now. Elias met her gaze briefly. They already didn't. Sarah studied him in silence. Then she said, "You prevented escalation." "For now," Elias said. "Yes," she agreed. "For now." She leaned back slightly, her expression thoughtful. "My people have watched civilizations rise and fall. Most fall because they misunderstand first contact. And some fall because they refuse it," Elias said. Saris nodded. "You did neither." A pause. "The council will decide your fate soon," she said. "Perhaps humanity's." Elias accepted that with a quiet nod. "Whatever they decide, we did what we believed was right." Saris looked at him carefully. "That belief is dangerous." Elias smiled faintly. "It's also how we're still here." As he left the chamber, Saris remained behind, her thoughts racing. The galaxy had always believed that survival belonged to the strongest, the oldest, or the most united. Humanity was proving another path existed. One where survival began with looking into the dark and choosing not to look away. The waiting was the hardest part. Elias Cade sat alone in a quiet chamber reserved for diplomatic review. The room was simple by design, smooth walls, soft light, no windows. It was meant to be neutral, a place where decisions could be made without distraction. To Elias, it felt like every other room where humans waited to learn if they had done the right thing too soon. Outside this chamber, the compact council debated. Some argued loudly. Others spoke with careful restraint. All of them understood that something had changed. A line had been crossed, not with weapons but with attention and intent. Humanity had spoken to the unknown, and the unknown had answered. Sarah stood at the edge of the council chamber, officially silent, unofficially watching everything. This was her role, always had been, but she had never felt the weight of it like this before. The models in her mind no longer felt theoretical. They felt immediate. Across the chamber, projections showed recordings of Elias' transmission, his calm voice, his steady gaze, the probe's response. "He acted without authority," one delegate said sharply. "He prevented a possible conflict," another countered. "He invited future danger." "He delayed it." The arguments circled endlessly. Saris focused on something else. Not what Elias had said, but how the unknown had reacted. The probe had not retreated in fear. It had not advanced in aggression. It had adjusted, just as humans did. At last the council reached a decision, not a final one. The compact was very good at postponing certainty. Elias was summoned. When he entered the chamber, all eyes turned toward him. This time fewer looked away. "You acted independently," the presiding delegate said. "You spoke for humanity without approval." "Yes," Elias replied. "You risked all member species." "Yes," Elias said again, just as calmly. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "And yet," the delegate continued, "no harm followed." "Not yet," Elias said. "But silence would not have protected us either." A long pause followed. "The compact will not sanction humanity," the delegate said finally, "but your actions will be monitored closely." Elias inclined his head. "That is fair." "You will also remain here," the delegate added. "As liaison, not just to us." Elias looked up slightly. "To the unknown." "Yes." The weight of that settled over the chamber. A human would stand at the edge of first contact, not because they were strongest, but because they had proven they could look without flinching. The session ended without ceremony. Later, Elias walked through the observation garden, the artificial sky above shifting slowly through calm colors. His shoulders felt heavy, but his steps were steady. He had expected consequences. He had accepted them long ago. Saris joined him quietly. "They did not exile you," she said. "No," Elias replied. "They just put me closer to the fire." Saris considered that. "You seem comfortable there." Elias smiled faintly. "Humans learn to survive by staying close enough to danger to understand it." They walked in silence for a while. "The probe has not returned," Saris said. "It will," Elias replied. "Not because it wants to attack, because it wants to know." "You sound certain." "I am," Elias said. "Curiosity recognizes itself." Sarah stopped walking and turned to face him. "Do you understand what you've done?" "Yes," Elias said. "I made humanity visible." "You were already visible," she said. "You made yourselves legible." Elias nodded slowly. "That's worse, isn't it?" "For some," Sarah said. "For others it is a relief." Time passed. Days turned into cycles. The station adjusted to its new reality. Security remained high, but panic faded. Delegates resumed negotiations, though conversations now included humans more often. Questions were asked. Observations shared. Elias became a quiet constant. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, others listened back. Saris continued her work, but her reports changed. Where once she categorized humanity as a potential instability, she now wrote something different: adaptive stabilizer. The probe returned weeks later. This time it did not come alone. Three shapes emerged from deep space, similar in design but varied in structure. They held position far beyond weapons range. No sudden movements, no aggression. A signal followed, more complex than before. Still not language, but closer, patterns built on patterns, responses layered on earlier exchanges. "They remember everything," one analyst said. "Yes," Saris replied, "just like humans." Elias stood beside her, watching the data stream. He felt no fear, only focus. "They're not here to fight," he said. "They're here to decide." "Decide what?" Saris asked. "How to classify us," Elias replied. Authorization was requested, debated, granted. This time the channel opened with consensus. Elias spoke again, but he did not repeat himself. He built on what came before. He shared simple concepts: cooperation, caution, mutual survival. He did not promise peace. He did not deny strength. He offered honesty. The response took longer this time. When it came, it was different. A pause. Then a structured pattern that mirrored not Elias' words but his restraint, his pacing, his willingness to wait. "They're matching you," someone whispered. "No," Elias said softly, "they're meeting us." The exchange continued for hours, slow, careful, no sudden leaps. No demands. By the end, something fragile had formed. Understanding, not friendship, not alliance. Recognition. When the probes finally withdrew, they left behind a complete map. Not of territory, but of pathways, safe routes, shared boundaries, warnings marked clearly. They were saying, "This is where we are, and this is where you are not alone." The galaxy reacted with shock. Some celebrated, others feared what would come next. Old powers questioned their place. New ones saw opportunity. Through it all, humanity remained what it had been from the start: watching, learning, adapting. Sarah stood once more at the observation deck, looking out into the stars. Elias joined her, standing quietly at her side. "You were right," she said, "about attention." Elias did not speak. "My people believed that power came from being unseen," Saris continued, "from observing without being observed." "And now?" Elias asked. "And now," she said, "I think true power is being seen and still being chosen." Elias looked out at the dark, endless space. Somewhere out there, something was watching humanity with the same careful interest humans had once reserved for the unknown. "That's all we ever wanted," he said quietly. "A chance to be understood before being judged." Saris glanced at him. "Do you think it will last?" Elias smiled, small and human. "Nothing lasts forever, but understanding lasts longer than fear." The station lights dimmed as the cycle ended. Beyond the glass, stars burned steadily, indifferent and ancient. And among them, humanity had finally found its place. Not as conquerors, not as prey, but as the species that looked into the dark and taught the dark how to look back.